That gray shape moving across your yard after dark, the one you grabbed a broom for, the one you chased toward the fence, heart pounding, certain it was trouble. Stop, because that slow, ugly, misunderstood little creature might be the hardest working helper you will ever have, and it costs you nothing. For years I believed an opossum in the yard meant disease, damage, and a mess I would have to clean up. I was wrong in a way that cost me real money. What finally changed my mind was a single account written in 1612 by a man most people only know from a children's story. Stay with me, and I will hand you a weekend trick to keep one patrolling your property on purpose. And yes, this works with the yard you already have tonight, no matter how small. I still remember the night it clicked. It was late September, cold enough to see my breath, and I was standing on my back step in my socks, holding a flashlight, watching one of these animals freeze under the beam. I had chased that same shape a dozen times. That night I didn't, and everything I thought I knew turned out to be backwards. Let me tell you how much my ignorance actually cost me, because I think it will sound familiar. For the better part of a decade, I fought a war in my own backyard, and I was losing it every single season. In spring, it was ticks. My dog came in loaded with them, and I lived in fear of the ones I couldn't see on myself. So I bought the sprays. I bought the yard treatments. I paid a company to come out 4 times a year and fog the whole property with chemicals, and I handed them roughly $400 every year to do it. In summer, it was slugs eating my garden, snails on the porch, and roaches trying to get in the back door. More traps, more bait, more money. In fall it was mice looking for a warm place, and I set out poison and snapped traps like a man defending a castle. And through all of it, night after night, I was chasing away the one animal that does every single one of those jobs for free. I was paying hundreds of dollars a year to replace an unpaid worker. I was actively driving off my land. When I finally added it up, I felt sick. But the number wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was learning I had been afraid of the wrong things for the wrong reasons. Let me start with the fear that ran the deepest, the one that made me grab the broom every time. I was terrified of rabies. Somewhere along the line I picked up the belief that any wild mammal wandering around at night, hissing and showing its teeth, was a rabid threat to my family and my pets. And the opossum, when it's cornered, puts on quite a show. It opens that long mouth full of teeth, 50 of them, more teeth than any other land mammal in North America, and it drools and hisses like something out of a nightmare. So I assumed the worst. I assumed sick. I assumed dangerous. Here is what I did not know. The opossum almost never carries rabies, and the reason is beautifully simple. Rabies is a virus, and viruses need a warm host to thrive. The opossum runs cold. Its body temperature sits somewhere around 94 to 97 degrees Fahrenheit, which is several degrees lower than most mammals its size. That low internal temperature makes it an extremely poor place for the rabies virus to survive and multiply. Wildlife researchers have pointed out for years that finding a rabid opossum is remarkably rare compared to raccoons, foxes, or bats. That whole terrifying display, the hissing, the drooling, the bared teeth, is a bluff. It is a frightened animal doing everything it can to look scary so it doesn't have to fight. It is, in truth, one of the most timid creatures you will ever meet. When it can't bluff, it faints. That's where we get the phrase playing possum, except it isn't playing at all. It's an involuntary shock response, like fainting from fear, and the animal can stay locked up like that for hours, completely helpless. So the monster I was chasing off with a broom was actually a nearly disease-proof, nervous, gentle animal that would rather pass out than hurt anyone. That was the first crack in everything I believed. But the fear wasn't the expensive part. The expensive part was the ticks. And this is where I really want you to lean in, because what I learned here genuinely changed how I spend my money. For years I threw cash at the tick problem from every direction, and I want you to notice who was on the other end of every one of those transactions. The chemical company selling the yard spray, the pest control service selling the quarterly visits, the pet store selling the treatments. Every one of them had a product for me, a subscription for me, a reason for me to keep paying. Not one of them ever mentioned that the most effective tick control machine in North America might already be walking through my yard at 2 in the morning for free. Why would they? There's no profit in telling you the solution is an animal you can't sell. Here is the fact that stopped me cold. There is a widely cited study from the Carey Institute of Ecosystem Studies, work associated with the researcher Rick Ostfeld, that put opossums in a lab setting and counted how many ticks they groom off and consume. The number that came out of that research was staggering. A single opossum could account for something like 4,000 to 5,000 ticks in a week during tick season. These animals are meticulous groomers. They spend enormous amounts of time cleaning themselves, and when a tick climbs aboard hoping for a meal, the opossum finds it and eats it. The estimates suggested that opossums destroy the vast majority of ticks that ever land on them, acting like a rolling tick vacuum moving through the underbrush. Now, I'll be honest with you, because this channel is about the truth, and not just a good story. Some scientists have since questioned that exact number, arguing the lab conditions may have inflated it. Fair enough, but even the skeptics agree the opossum eats ticks, and is nowhere near the tick spreader that mice and rats are. And here is the part that matters even more. Opossums prey on the very rodents that are the real tick factories. The white-footed mouse is the animal that actually pumps Lyme disease into the tick population. So whether an opossum eats 10 ticks or 4,000, it is also hunting the mice that create the ticks in the first place. It attacks the problem from both ends. I was paying $400 a year to poison my yard, and nature had already sent me a specialist, and I kept chasing him toward the fence with a flashlight in my hand. Once I stopped being afraid, I started actually watching what these animals did at night, and what I saw turned my whole yard economy upside down. I want you to think about everything you currently pay to keep out of your home and garden. Slugs, snails, cockroaches, beetles, crickets, rats, mice, snakes, overripe fallen fruit rotting under your trees, even the carcass of something that died in the corner of the lot. Now let me tell you the diet of the opossum, because it reads like the exact list of everything I was fighting. They are opportunistic omnivores, which is a fancy way of saying they eat almost anything, and what they crave most is exactly the stuff you want gone. They hoover up slugs and snails that shred your garden leaves. They crunch through cockroaches and beetles. They hunt mice and even rats. They clean up fallen, rotting fruit that would otherwise draw wasps and flies. They eat carrion, the dead things, before those things can rot and spread sickness. They are, quite literally, the night shift cleanup crew, and they clock in for free. There's a historical thread here that I find almost unbelievable, and it points to how long people actually understood this before we forgot it. The opossum is North America's only marsupial, the only pouched mammal on the entire continent, a living relic that has been shuffling around since the age of the dinosaurs. It has barely changed in tens of millions of years, because its strategy simply works. Eat everything, breed often, avoid fights, and survive. When European settlers arrived, they wrote about this strange animal with wonder. Captain John Smith, the same man from the Jamestown colony, recorded one of the first English descriptions of it in 1612. He wrote of a creature he spelled Opossum, describing it as having a head like a swine, a tail like a rat, and the size of a cat, and he noted the astonishing pouch where it carried its young. That word came from the Powhatan people, from a term meaning white animal or white dog. The native peoples of this land knew this animal intimately for thousands of years, and they did not fear it the way I did. They understood it as part of the balance. So how did we get from wonder and respect all the way to me standing on my porch chasing one with a broom? That's the question that started to make me angry, and it deserves a real answer. Somewhere in the last century, as neighborhoods got tidy and manicured and marketed to, the opossum got rebranded in our minds. It's not cute. It doesn't have a fluffy tail or big soft eyes. It looks, to be blunt, like a giant rat wearing a gray coat, and that resemblance alone was enough to condemn it. We lumped it in with vermin. We decided anything ugly crawling around at night must be filthy and dangerous. And that assumption was very, very convenient for everyone who wanted to sell us a solution. If you believe the animal is the problem, you'll pay to remove it, and then you'll pay again for the sprays and traps to handle the pests it would have eaten for you. The ugliness did the marketing. Nobody had to run a campaign against the opossum. They just had to let us keep believing our own eyes were telling us the truth. That realization stung. But before I show you exactly how to put this to work in your own yard, I want to mention something that fits right into what we're talking about. This whole journey realizing how much I was spending to fight problems that nature had already solved for free eventually led me to write it all down. The result is a series of books called First Fixes, Deep Leverage, and The Full Stack. Each one is built around the same principle you're seeing here. Stop paying for complicated solutions to simple problems and start using the practical, forgotten knowledge that was working quietly before someone decided you should buy a replacement for it. If that idea speaks to you, the books are mentioned in the description. Now, with that said, let's get back to what I actually saw when I stopped being afraid and started paying attention. But the truth about this animal only gets more remarkable the closer you look, and the next fact is the one that genuinely made my jaw drop. This gentle, nervous, cold-bodied little creature is one of the few animals on Earth that can survive the bite of a venomous snake. Opossums are largely immune to snake venom, including from rattlesnakes and copperheads, the two snakes that put more people in American emergency rooms than any others. They will actually hunt and eat these snakes. For a long time, this was treated almost as folklore, a country tale, until researchers went looking for the mechanism and found it. Scientists identified a peptide, a small protein chain in the opossum's blood that neutralizes the toxins in snake venom. The research on this compound, sometimes referred to as a lethal toxin neutralizing factor, has been studied as a possible basis for a cheaper, more universal antivenom for humans. Think about that. The animal I chased off my property is walking around with a natural antivenom in its veins that medical researchers hope might one day save human lives, and it eats the snakes that threaten my grandchildren in the yard. So let me pull this together, because by now you might be feeling the same thing I felt, which is a mix of amazement and a little bit of foolishness. Here is an animal that almost never carries rabies, that eats the ticks off itself and hunts the mice that breed them, that devours slugs, snails, roaches, beetles, mice, and rats, that cleans up rotting fruit and carrion before they spread disease, that kills and eats venomous snakes and can't even be poisoned by their bite, that asks for nothing, damages almost nothing, and moves on within a few nights because it's nomadic and rarely stays in one den for long, and for years I treated it like an enemy. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now, because I thought it too. You're thinking, this is fine for someone with acres of land or a big wild garden, but my situation is different. Maybe you've got a small city lot. Maybe you've got a tidy suburban yard with a fence. Maybe you rent and can't go changing the whole property. I hear you. And this next part is built specifically for you, because the beautiful thing about this animal is that it needs almost nothing from you to start helping, and everything I'm about to tell you can be done with what you already have. First, And this is the one that costs you nothing but a change of habit. Simply stop driving them off. That's it. When you see that gray shape moving along the fence line at night, turn off the porch light and go back inside. Let it work. It is not going to move into your attic like a raccoon, because opossums are poor climbers into tight structures, and they don't nest aggressively in homes the way rodents do. They den in whatever hollow they find. A brush pile, a gap under a shed, an old burrow, another animal abandoned, and then they wander off in a few days. You are not adopting a permanent tenant. You are hosting a traveling exterminator who does a few nights of free work and moves along. Second, stop the poison. This one is urgent, and I wish someone had grabbed me by the collar and told me years ago. If you put out rat poison, you are not just killing rats. The opossum that eats a poisoned rodent gets that poison too, and so do the owls and hawks. You are personally removing the free pest controllers from your own ecosystem and then wondering why the pests keep coming back stronger. Every dollar you spend on rodent poison may be actively killing the animal that would have hunted those rodents for free. Just stopping the poison today, with the yard you already have, tips the whole balance back in your favor. Third, secure the things that draw the wrong crowd but leave the natural food. Keep your trash can lids tight so you're not creating a garbage buffet, but let the fallen fruit under your tree stay for a night or two, because that's exactly what pulls an opossum in to clean up. Don't seal off every gap under the shed if you can help it, because that low, quiet, sheltered space is the kind of temporary den that convinces a passing opossum to spend a few nights patrolling your slugs and snails. None of this requires a purchase. None of this requires a professional. It requires you to stop fighting and let an ancient system do what it has done for 60 million years. I did exactly these 3 things, and within 1 season I noticed something: fewer slugs on my hostas, fewer snails on the steppe. And the tick situation on my dog honestly got better, though I'll never claim any single animal deserves all the credit. What I can tell you for certain is that I canceled the quarterly chemical service. I stopped throwing $400 a year at a problem that a free animal was designed to handle, and the yard did not fall apart. It got healthier. But there's one more thing. The piece that pulled everything together for me. The technique I promised you at the start. And I want to tell you exactly where I found it, because it isn't something you'll hear from the pest control man or the garden center clerk. I went looking through old rural and farm knowledge, the kind of practical wisdom that used to get passed down before we outsourced all our common sense to companies with something to sell, and what kept surfacing in the accounts of old farmers and in the way native peoples described living alongside this animal for centuries was a simple principle. You don't attract an opossum with food, because that just draws every hungry animal for a mile. You invite one by offering the one thing it struggles to find in a tidy modern yard, and that one thing is a small, safe, dark place to rest during the day, plus a reliable sip of water. Here is the weekend version, and it costs you next to nothing. Take a wooden crate, an old plastic tote turned on its side, or even a few boards leaned against the back of your shed to make a low, shaded pocket about the size of a milk crate. Tuck it into a quiet corner along a fence line or against a wall, somewhere out of the wind and out of direct sun, and lay a little dry leaf litter inside. That's the den. Then, a few feet away, set out a shallow dish of plain water, kept low to the ground and refilled every couple of days. Not food, just water and shelter. An opossum passing through your neighborhood, and they are passing through more than you realize, will find that safe daytime spot, hole up, and spend its active night hours doing exactly what it does best, hunting through your yard for every slug, snail, roach, mouse, and tick it can find. Because these animals are nomadic, it won't overstay its welcome, but as one moves on, the shelter and water quietly invite the next one. You've built a rotating position for a free, self-employed exterminator, and you built it in an afternoon with junk from your garage. The reason this works, and the reason it was forgotten, comes back to that account from 1612 and everything that followed. For most of human history on this continent, people lived close enough to the land to notice which animals helped and which ones harmed, and they arranged their homes accordingly. They knew the ugly gray creature with the rat tail was a friend to the farm. That knowledge didn't disappear because it stopped being true. It disappeared because a tidy lawn became a status symbol, because an ugly animal was easy to villainize, and because there was steady money to be made selling us the chemical replacements for the free help we were chasing away. The method survived only in the margins, in old farm talk, and in the memory of people who never stopped paying attention. I just dug it back up, and now it's yours. I think about that cold September night a lot. Me on the step in my socks, flashlight in hand, finally not reaching for the broom. That was the night I stopped fighting the wrong enemy. What I recovered wasn't just a pest control trick. It was the plain, grounded common sense that our grandparents took for granted. The understanding that the natural world is not out to get us, that some of its ugliest members are its most generous, and that we were sold a fear that emptied our wallets and poisoned our yards. If you're the kind of person who would rather trust 60 million years of proven design than a $400 a year subscription to a spray truck, then you already understand what this channel is about. You don't need to be sold a complicated solution to a simple problem. You need the quiet, forgotten knowledge that was working just fine before someone decided you should pay for it instead. So let me ask you something specific, and I really do want you to answer this one. Have you ever chased an opossum out of your yard, and now, knowing what it was actually there to do you wish you'd let it stay? Tell me about it in the comments. And I'd love to know where you're watching from, because I'm curious how many parts of the country still have these little helpers wandering through at night. Drop your state, your town, your country, whatever you're comfortable sharing. It only takes a few words, and it helps more people find this. If this changed the way you see that gray shape by the fence, then come join the rest of us who are digging up the practical, proven knowledge that convenience and marketing quietly buried. Subscribe, because that's exactly what we do here. And next time, I'm going to show you another creature almost everyone kills on sight in the garden, one that a study found can eat its own body weight in aphids and mosquito larvae in a single day. You've been taught to fear the wrong ones your whole life. Let's fix that together. I'll see you there. I'm still here because you are, so let me hand you the rest. Members get the deeper version of tonight's video, the ecosystem playbook for your yard, season by season, picking up right where we stopped. Inside the Old Ways Almanac, you can ask me your own question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. And so many Old Ways folks like you are already here. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel anytime. One click.